This is the Chrillcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Will.
And I'm Raycevick.
I just realized we didn't do an intro for the Wednesday video.
Yeah, we did.
We did?
Yes.
No, we didn't.
Don't worry
We
about
did, because
that.
he did awkward. He said awkward silence. Remember?
Yeah.
You don't remember, whatever.
No,
Anyways,
I mean, like, I didn't introduce the day, so it's Manic Monday, but I forgot to do it for Wednesday. Go on.
whatever. I'll just edit it in later. We'll see.
Yep.
So before we get talking about Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, some Mass Effect things, and some more Mass Effect things, Raycevick, why don't you tell everybody about your channel?
My name's Raycevick. I do a YouTube channel, I think. And yeah, if you like long videos and I guess some short videos, sometimes go check it out. We're probably going to spend a lot of time on Mass Effect here for at least my indication. At least I'm speaking for myself, and I happen to have a Mass Effect series on there. So if you're interested in seeing that, go check it out.
I'll make sure we link the Mass Effect series in the description or the pinned comment. There will be somewhere connected to this video. I just don't know where yet because we're recording right now. So
I mean, the Mass Effect Andromeda one's my favorite, so that's another one that you can just link to as well.
You don't work on your promotion, though, like your elevator speech. You're like, come to my channel.
I don't mind doing elevator pitches for other people's work or like a story, but in terms of my channel, I don't know. It's like, I mean, it's why it's funny when I get the accusation of like, oh, you're really arrogant for putting your name all over this, and I'm like, I
never thought that.
I don't think of myself as a particularly arrogant person, but yeah, in terms of, I mean, I guess, but I mean, based on the way that I advertise myself, that name is really the best thing that I do in terms of selling my materials. So take that as you will.
2.8 million views, no self-promotion. Man, you got to teach me your secrets. All right, so
better content, Chris.
Yes.
Trust me, as someone that did YouTube for like, over 10 years with basically no attention, it's a good mixture of content and material and pure utter luck. That, not to go too long-winded of a point, the Halo videos I did, those sat at 1,000 views for about 8 months, and the Call of Duty one, years.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it just kind of comes together. And then the main thing is that when you do get that time in the spotlight, to jump on it and not let it just fade away.
Makes sense. So first quick topic here is on the heels of the Need for Speed Hot Pursuit remake. A lot of Need for Speed fans want the quote-unquote real Need for Speed Most Wanted HD remake, the 2005 version, not the 2012 version, in 2021. What do you guys think about the potential of EA actually doing it?
What do you think, Will?
I don't know. They're making a good game, very slim, but I don't know. Like, I'm so sour with this series at this point in time because they've just screwed it up so often that even if they made a remake, I don't even know if I even buy it at this point. So, I mean, I'm just so wishy-washy on this. I hope, I know there's still fans of this game, so I hope for their sake that they actually do it, but I don't know.
Well, I'm curious, did you play Need for Speed Heat?
I haven't downloaded it. I haven't started it yet.
Slow to start with, but once you get to about like level 200 in the cars, like about 2 hours in, that's when I feel like it starts to really click. And it's a real shame actually that Ghost has now had to merge with Criterion, because I thought they finally nailed it with Heat. I thought they made a great game, and one that also served as a really good template and blueprint. Not to spoil the story of what goes in there, because anyway, the story is shit anyways, but in terms of gameplay, what was an interesting concept is that in that game, in order to get the best parts, you couldn't just go out and buy them. What you had to do was you had to get yourself to max heat level and then start doing races, and that's how you got the legendary parts. And I'm like, if you did just if you just made some more varied parts and more content, you could potentially have Destiny with cars in your hands, which, on my opinion, like, I wouldn't be a massive fan of, but in terms of just the format that they had, I'm like, you could build something here. There's potential to have an end game in a Need for Speed title, which hasn't really been done before. But I don't think they're going to go down that route, considering that now that team has merged with Criterion, and I imagine they're probably going to go down their own route with the next Need for Speed game.
See, I actually thought, me personally, thought that the Need for Speed Most Wanted remake was one of the biggest disappointments. Not remake, but the reimagining they did in 2012 was one of the biggest disappointments I ever had with the Need for Speed series. And in fact, it was one of the reasons I had gone back to the Need for Speed series was the Need for Speed Most Wanted title that came out in 2012, which did not feel like the original at all.
I got super burned on that too.
because it's Burnout Paradise. And
Yeah.
Burnout Paradise is a good game, but yeah, that's not what people are expecting. And it's like that was, I think, in this video actually, I did talk about that. I talked about how Most Wanted 2012 and Hot Pursuit more so in particular. They're very good games. They're very well constructed in terms of polish and material, but yeah, they don't have that feeling of the old Need for Speed titles, and that's because, and it's also kind of a bit of a burnout as well because, terrible sentence by the way, but. It's disappointing for Burnout as well because that series can't flex its full muscle because when you have destruction with licensed manufacturers, you got to rein it back and you got to, tone things down. And that's what the Burnout series did the opposite of. So it's like neither Burnout fans nor Need for Speed fans could be truly satisfied with those style of games.
When I got Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012, I actually thought to myself, if this game mode this entire game was the post game for the 2005 game, that would have actually worked really well. But having those as two separate games doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it kind of goes to the idea of giving Need for Speed some type of end game content of whatever it might be. Because typically in the past they've just always said, okay, play multiplayer, and it's like, well, I mean, I kind of want to do some other things, hopefully. So in terms of them redoing Most Wanted, I wouldn't be surprised if they did do it. The main thing is that they seem to be very hesitant about going back to that old Need for Speed style, which is bizarre because those are the best-selling games in the franchise. And I don't see why that driving model is for some reason seen as this thing that they don't like. Even Heat, which does let you do grip builds that are viable, it still leans towards just the brake to drift mechanics and sliding around turns, stuff like that. So. Yeah, it's a little strange. I don't know. There's not too much for me to say on it because I can't imagine them going through that, mainly because it also highlights what they did to Black Box because they're the ones that closed them down. So it's like, hey, here's this game from the company that no longer exists, and it's gonna be very hard to kind of positively spin that.
What was that other game that just recently? Wasn't there a game that came out recently that was made by a company that no longer exists? Was a remake? Was it Destroy All Humans? Is that company that originally made that still around? I can't remember.
Yes, that got remastered by someone else. And I heard the remaster is very good. I haven't played it yet, but I heard it was very well done. And Pandemic was another company that got the EA ban hammer.
That's right.
And those are the guys that did Star Wars Battlefront 2 and some of the full spectrum war games, and Mercenaries was the main one that they were known for, I think.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I was thinking. Like, I don't think it's outside of EA's wheelhouse to remake a game from a shutdown developer.
Yeah, so. No, I could. That point, I think that one is not really actually too bad. That's probably not the reason they're not doing. I think I can't really. I'll backtrack on that point because I can't really think of why aren't they doing it? But in some ways, I guess it's because they're oddly doing with Need for Speed now what they should have done in the first place, which is let it breathe, give it time in development, let things stew and stuff like that. So it's strange. So maybe that's why they don't just want to, immediately backtrack. Although if the next Need for Speed doesn't do well, maybe they will be inclined enough to resurrect that.
Yeah, like I know they were pushing back on the Mass Effect trilogy remake for a long time, and now they're like, okay, fine, here you go, we'll print free money.
Yeah, because after Anthem, wasn't what they wanted to turn out to be, then that seemed to be. Because the other thing too is there were rumors of the Mass Effect remaster going on for a long time, particularly, and now that we understand that they're basically overhauling Mass Effect 1, that it makes sense, that this isn't a situation of the Need for Speed Hot Pursuit remaster where they didn't even really enhance the game that much. Granted, the game still looks gorgeous. They don't really need to tweak it too much in terms of visuals, but they kind of just gave it online play again, some DLC and crossplay.
So here's the next question. This is quick topic number 2. Mass Effect has shown, we kind of talked about this, it's a bit more of a rehash of what we talked about on what you guys will see on Wednesday. The side-by-side changes between the Mass Effect remake and the originals for the Legendary Edition graphics. I think I'm going to see if I can...
maybe my computer just sucks, but I've looked at these and they're like, it doesn't look that much better.
I mean, there's a lot of them also in low resolution modes as well. That don't give a perfect side by side. I mean, and the other thing too is Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 1, there's also only so much you can do. Like, you never will be able to give it the, especially because even things like the art style hadn't been fully cemented by Mass Effect 1. It was really Mass Effect 2 where I think they finally put everything on lockdown and really nailed the look of the aliens, the spaceships, the creatures, and the environments and such. So that's another restriction. But yeah, in terms of what I've seen in this trailer, again, some things that are to me a definite improvement, other ones that are mixed, kind of like Verma, like it's kind of a bit better, and then other ones like Eden Prime, where I'm like, no, I don't care for that change at all.
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag personally. Like anytime you get new artists in the development room, you end up with something that's different, not necessarily better.
Yeah, and yeah, it very much depends on teams. And then of course, in terms of Mass Effect 2 and 3, yeah, the lens flare was already getting memes pretty hard, so hopefully they'll turn that down in the cutscenes they got. I do appreciate they at least the main thing I'm mainly looking forward to, or at least hopeful for with this collection, is that it's going to make playing an enhanced version of all these games much easier, because you always could with Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. There's a great set of mods for all of those games. They're a bitch to install, though. I'm sorry, there's no kind way to say it. I know the people who make them put a lot of heart and soul into them, and they are trying to do the best they can to make the tools as optimized as they can. The installers are a lot better now than when I covered the videos on them as well. But there's still a pain, especially to reinstall new machines. So to have a Legendary Edition where it's just, hey, everything's 4K, you got your high resolution cutscenes so things don't look pixelated, stuff like that. To have those just in one package would be nice. Hopefully it's not 150 fucking gigs. Please, God, compress your files for the love of God.
That kind of brings me to the last part of the Monday video here is some of the tidbits I got from some of the BioWare reading I've been doing on the Mass Effect trilogy led me to this particular interview with Kevin Meek, where he talked about the boss fights in the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. They're being changed essentially to fix some of what they considered to be flaws in the original game, like lack of cover in the Benezia fight, but also some kind of scaling difficulty where you can make the game easier from all perspectives in regards to like fights and just like the layouts of the levels. How do you feel about them changing like some of the core, like what was there? You know what I mean?
I'm open to the idea, because Mass Effect 1, while there's things I really like about it, in terms of things like the Krogan being scary and all that type of stuff, there's other things like the AI that you just know were there because it was one of BioWare's first attempts at a pseudo 3D action game. I mean, technically Jade Empire was there, but that was even rougher than Mass Effect was. So, you know, when the AI run into walls or they go back and forth in the same location, you know that had they more time to flesh it out, they probably would have resolved that. So those are things that I'm totally open for them adjusting, because it feels like something that I think the sign of a good remaster is when you feel like these are changes that the team would have made if they had the opportunity.
Yeah, I agree.
So one of the things I noticed when I replayed Mass Effect 1 recently was right in that first level, if you play on, like, I would play on the insanity difficulty, the high, whatever the highest difficulty rating was. And in the very first level, when you're coming up on the Geth for the kind of the first time, maybe the second time in the level, and the destroyer comes through, and you just can't go anywhere. It just follows you. It will follow you back to the first checkpoint of the game if you let it, until it gets to you and takes you down. So unless you know how to use biotics, like, you're just done right there.
It's things like that that make it pretty evident that, you know, that the AI systems were not very sophisticated when they were making them. So if they're going to, I honestly, in order to make them better, I imagine they probably wouldn't even adjust that much, especially because there's probably not even that much they can do. Like, they do have a budget for overhauling the game's graphics, but this isn't a Resident Evil situation where, you know, they're doing a full remake from the ground up. They got a small budget to add some tweaks here and there.
I'm kind of glad that they're not doing a full-blown remake, because I imagine there'd be a lot more things that people wouldn't like about the changes that they would have to make.
There's also just so much they would have to remake as well. Like, Resident Evil 2 Remake in many ways is a game retold it's more of a reimagining in many ways. The remake is a bit of a misnomer in many aspects, but I actually kind of welcome that, because I think the idea of taking the material of a PlayStation game and reimagining that through the lens of modern material is interesting. with Mass Effect, so much of it was already ahead of the curve in terms of its design and the way that a lot of games still play like Mass Effect now to this point. So in that case, yeah, then a full remake is even more unnecessary.
What I want them to do with the Mass Effect series, and this is kind of a bonus thing, I guess, that we can talk about, is I would love to see the what it would be, the context of the game before the game started, like First Contact, the discovery of the Mass Effect. I think that would be a extremely interesting game to play through.
Don't you know there was a Twitter poll? They didn't want that. They wanted to keep doing sequels, so we're not going to do that.
I know, but I wanted it badly. That's what I like.
Yeah. What was on Twitter then?
Yeah, no, Twitter poll said no, so not that. No, I agree. I think it'd be interesting to see some. I mean, the tough thing, I do understand ultimately why they didn't go and make a full prequel game, because at the end of the day, the First Contact War is interesting for fans. It's not really something that you can immediately pitch to a casual goer immediately. But in terms of using that, like if there was some, you know, Deus Ex or Witcher style DLC that delved into those types of things, if it was like an extra chapter or a character's flashback or something, yeah, it would be interesting to explore those types of details. And yeah, I don't think they're probably going to go that far in terms of the remaster, but in terms of a new game, I don't know about you guys, but in terms of the teaser they released, the thing that has me concerned is seeing Liara on just this unknown ice planet. I really don't want them to essentially do Andromeda, but in the Milky Way, where it's 500 and 600 years in the future. And hey, a big new promise showed up. It's like, I would much rather it be a direct follow-up, because I think in many ways, while Mass Effect 3's ending might be controversial and seen as awful, there's actually a lot of a potential to tell a story within that scenario. The scenario of all the relays being shut down, everyone stranded on Earth that's been decimated. Like that's total anarchy. That's totally a situation where this good alliance between all these races that's never happened would absolutely go to shit, and someone would need to step up to repair that.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, either that, like direct, like literally a direct sequel to 3, or like I said, a prequel to the whole series. And you could do, if you did actually do a remake of the Mass Effect trilogy, you could have some changes made throughout the, I mean, nothing major, because then you have to do some serious rewrites, but there could be something small in there.
You could do things like you could expand on the Protheans.
Yeah.
Things like Javik and all that. I even think you get the sense that they almost wanted to go further with those things in the original game. Did you guys ever read the materials of the leaked ME3 script?
I think back when that first leaked, I did, but it's been a long time since I've looked at it.
Because it is fascinating to look back on. It's obviously very difficult to read through the raw document. You kind of have to pick apart pieces and rely on some people that have compiled the different dialogue lines. But they hint at things like working with Emily Wong from Mass Effect 1 on the Citadel in an assassination plot. They mentioned Zaid potentially betraying you on Omega, like Omega was originally part of the main quest. They mentioned like another Vermeer situation involving Liara and Ashley. It's like there's a lot of things that were left in. They mentioned, I believe, one of my favorites I thought sounded awesome was on the Geth planet. When you're actually, sorry, on the Quarian homeworld, you would get into a turret and shoot down Geth ships in the sky that were coming down to land. And it's like, that sounds like a fucking awesome set piece.
Right? Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so I'm sure there was so many things that there's probably more than enough material on the cutting room floor that if a remake were to be made, probably would get implemented. It's just that then you got to do 3 fully budgeted sci-fi games. And I just don't think, 1, that's not worth it, and 2, that's also, you probably could just redirect that into a follow-up to the trilogy, which seems like what they're doing, to be fair.
So what's your opinion on EA choosing not to go with the indoctrination theory?
Oh, thank God, because I think the indoctrination theory is bullshit, and it always was. Because like I've had so many arguments with people where they go, no, but this and this and this, and I'm going, it's plain as day. You have a VI that when he goes to Shepard, he says, there's no indoctrinated presence nearby. And then as soon as Kai Lang shows up, immediately it flares and says, indoctrinated person right there. And it comes in. And I'm going, if that was the case, unless you mean to tell me Shepard got indoctrinated between coming from Thessia to going to Earth, which is not how it works. It's not a thing. And actually, not to go on, another tirade, but it's like I got really irritated when the extended cut came out and BioWare intentionally added things to fuel the fire of the indoctrination theory. Like when Shepard gets shot up into the corpse room and he wakes up and his eyes go, I went, oh, fuck you guys. Fuck you for like, you're not, you have the opportunity to resolve your plot and you're making things more muddled.
I wonder if they will do anything to alter anything at the end of the game, for Mass Effect 3 that will either muddy or unmuddy the waters, or if they'll just leave it as is.
Because if I was if I was in charge, what I would want to do is add like a fifth option or whatever. That's like secret and we don't tell people and we let them discover it naturally, because that would spread like a wildfire immediately. It would be people like, hey, wait a minute, I don't remember this dialogue option. And then, hey, what the fuck is this cutscene, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, oh, that's where the next game is going.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, they need some kind of tie-in for the next game. And the real question is, how many of your choices from the Mass Effect Legendary Edition will transfer to number 4 or whatever they call the next one?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be ultimately pretty minimal. I mean, it's all going to depend on what the actual follow-up. If they end up doing the thing where we end up just meeting with Liara 400 years later, then nothing's going to matter at the end of the day, probably.
Fair enough. Of course, but at the same time, you have the potential in Mass Effect 1 to remove an entire race from the galaxy.
Yeah.
And that could have some lasting impacts into the future. Or like the abilities for Krogans to reproduce, and those kinds of choices could have an impact 400 years in the galaxy later. Like maybe they give you a Genesis, like they did for Mass Effect 2 on the PS3, or like they did for Mass Effect 3 on the Wii U. Or you don't have any tie-ins from the previous games. Fine, here's the comic that tells you everything that happened before it, and you can make some quick choices. And then,
because how do you guys have much investment in the Dragon Age franchise?
I don't.
No, not yet.
Yeah, because Mass Effect, it was done the way it was because they wanted to keep the entire trilogy within the same console generation. So the reason why Mass Effect 3 wasn't delayed another year is because by then the next generation consoles would have been coming out, and then they would have had to make it another, version for that, et cetera, then transfer your saves. And what's interesting is that for the Dragon Age franchise, that did go cross-generation between Origins 2 and Inquisition. And what was interesting is that Inquisition had to be held back in terms of its technology because they were forced to port that to the last gen systems by EA, because back then publishers believed that the console market was going to die and it was all just going to go mobile, and that the PS4 and the Xbox One were going to fail. Obviously, in hindsight, that sounds really stupid now, but back then that was the genuine belief. So as a result, they do all this effort for Dragon Age Inquisition to be go to stay within the same console generation, and then the PS3 and 360 copies added up to barely 1,000 copies together. I'm sorry, 1 million copies.
I was gonna say,
yeah, it's a big difference. Yeah, barely 1 million copies. So they between those two platforms with a much bigger install base, they equaled one platform, like the PS4 sales. So it's just like it was. So being cross generational, it wasn't a deterrence at all. If anything, Dragon Age Inquisition was BioWare's biggest success. So I think that set the precedent that if they were to continue Mass Effect in terms of that they wanted to continue the plot lines in terms of your decisions and stuff like that, doing something like a Genesis comic or a quick prequel mission, or even just summarizing Shepard's bio, in terms of like the choice in the past, I don't think players would be very opposed to it. I think they'd roll with it just fine.
If you just had all the major decisions that would actually affect the galaxy in whatever year they choose to continue the story in, would be a decent choice. Like people that bought the Wii U version who only got Mass Effect 3.
Yeah.
Like that's all they got. They got the comic and Mass Effect 3.
Exactly.
So, and people still bought it. It ended up being like a $3 game by the time, like 2 years after it came out.
But that was Mass Effect 3 a couple months after its launch too. So go figure.
All right, let's see here. Did I have any other questions? You said you were fine with the accessibility factor, with making things a little easier or changing kind of the settings for, for the boss battles like Benezia.
Yep.
Is there anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's completely fine. I mean, Mass Effect 1, I know a lot of people that don't get into it. So if they want to iron out those kinks, if they want to make things like I know the Venezia fight is one of the things that people say is really annoying. Same thing with a lot of the Mako driving, and same thing with some of these specific fights on like Pharos against the zombies. If they want to address those things, then yeah, I think that's totally okay.
I'll be honest with you though, the Mako and being able to drive at a 90-degree angle upwards kind of just, it's one of those things that sticks with me, like a B-rated sci-fi movie. I just love it.
Well, I'm curious. One of the things, because they've mentioned they're keeping the Mako, but they're changing the physics of it. So I'm
Right.
like, how big is that change? Is it just like a subtle tweak thing, or does it mean they're making it like the Nomad in Andromeda? Because if they're doing that, then that's actually cool because I enjoyed driving that vehicle.
I don't have a lot of opinions on Andromeda. I played it. That's as
Not a
far as
lot
I
of
can go with
people
it.
do.
Yeah.
I had a hard time getting into it just because of how jarring of a difference it was between the trilogy, and I basically finished Mass Effect 3 and went right to Andromeda because I waited a long time to play Mass Effect 3. And then
And
yeah, it was jarring.
and also its opening hours are also the worst part of the game as well. So it really gives a very poor first impression.
Didn't help that I thought my character looked good at midnight the night before I started playing it, and the next day I booted it up and he was an abomination.
Ah!
I was like, what? I thought he looked like me. I don't look that bad. Anyway, anything else you guys want to say about the Mass Effect Legendary Edition?
I think I've spoken my piece. What about you, Will?
Yeah, same. I hope it comes to the Switch. I would probably buy it immediately on the Switch.
Honestly, I feel like that actually like be a good marketing pull. Yeah, to have all three of the games on the go. That's something. I mean, actually, before we go, I'm not aware of EA's position on the Switch because I don't have a Switch. I'm not paying attention to it too closely. But have they been? They put Apex Legends on there recently, didn't they?
EA basically ignored the Switch for almost 3 years, but they are slowly coming around. Like, I imagine there'll be a Madden game on there in the near future, because why wouldn't you have Madden on a portable console?
What did they just get? A game just got ported to the Switch that has the Frostbite engine. Which one was it?
Oh, I know they're putting the Need for Speed games on there.
I was gonna say because that was probably their biggest hurdle was trying to squeeze Frostbite onto that tech.
EA,
Can't remember which one it is. It just happened, and everyone's like, "Oh, now it's on here, so Madden should come."
Yeah.
Didn't they put? No, FIFA's been on there, but I don't think FIFA uses Frostbite, does it?
It does.
It does. Okay, Apex is on there. Crisis? Did they put Crisis on there?
Oh, Crisis is on there. Yeah.
That's funny.
I didn't even know that.
I think all three of them are on there.
Yeah, no, so yeah, if EA have finally come around to the platform, then yeah, it only makes sense to put the Mass Effect trilogy on there because
I'm just gonna wait.
Yeah.
Even if they just put the classic
Koa
games,
and,
I'm fine.
Yeah, I bought Koa for the Xbox because I got super excited for the re-release, and then they announced it for the Switch like 6 months or about 4 months later.
Yeah.
Kingdoms of Amalur, for anybody that doesn't know what that means.
Yep.
Will always says Koa and throws me out.
I was surprised when that got remastered. I was like, really? They're pointing at this. I mean, like, I think that was the other indicator too. It's like, well, if they're remastering this, then of course they're gonna fucking remaster Mass Effect. Like, it wouldn't make any goddamn sense.
Yes. It's because I kept saying they needed to do it. A lot of
It's your fault. No. Anyways, guys, you guys like this segment? Stay tuned. We got a whole bunch more coming this week. So, as always, I'm Chris.
And I'm Will.
Take it easy.
And we will see you
Next Chrillcast. Bye, guys.